the other half wanted to change from within. Well, now Bill Ayers is teaching our kids in college, and the Progressive Party is in power, and they're doing the changes that they want to do to fundamentally destroy our republic.
All right, Al, going to get to a few more phone calls here. Christy's in Fredericksburg, Virginia, on the Democrats line. Christy, the government shutdown, what do you think? And what do you think about what you've been seeing on Capitol Hill?
I am really just outraged as an American citizen. I think that the members of Congress are not representing the American people the way they should. They're not doing their job. There's so many of us. I'm a DOD worker, and this is our second time being furloughed. They're not considering the impact that this is going to have on our economy long term, that they need to stop behaving childish and get this bill passed and open the government back up so that we as federal employees can do our job and so that we can try to maintain our economy at the level it is. Stop playing the blame game. Enough is enough. Do your job.
And Christy, how is it affecting you just on a daily basis in your family?
On a daily basis, I'm losing my income because I'm a single person. And so it's impacting me heavily because this is my second furlough. I lost 20% of my income this summer. And this is ongoing. It makes it very stressful. And bill payers do not want to hear that you cannot make your bills.
Right, right. And again, taking your calls, the number's up on your screen. Republicans, join us at 202-585-3885. Democrats, 202-585-3886. And independents and others, 202-585-3887. You can also go ahead online to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Cspan. We have a poll question up. How much has the government shutdown affected you? A lot, a little, not at all. And you can also weigh in, see what other people are saying there. And then you can also send us a tweet and use the hashtag Cspan chat. We do have a tweet from a Congresswoman, Vicky Hartzler from Missouri. She says Democrats will vote to support federal bureaucrats, but not pediatric cancer research, talking about this retroactive pay bill. And then Congressman Tim Huelskamp, he weighed in on another issue that they debated earlier in the House. This was about the chaplains for the military. He says religious liberty of those serving in our military must not be suspended simply to create political and personal pain. And then another tweet coming from Lisa Mascaro, who covers Congress for the LA Times and for the Tribune, says at least the congressman ducking into Starbucks just now looked as exhausted as everyone else on the Hill. So a look at the ground here in Washington, D.C. Debbie's joining us, Cave Junction, Oregon, on the Republicans line.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Debbie.
First off, I just wanted to say I'm retired military, and I also used to work for the state of Oregon. When I worked for the state, we were furloughed 14 days without pay. So I don't really want to hear about how the federal employees are boo-hooing about losing 2 or 3 days last summer and not getting paid during the shutdown. We went through 14 days for 3 years in a row. So I know what that's about. But what I'm really upset about is the threat to the military chaplains. This administration is doing something that no president has ever done before. They're violating people's constitutional rights with threat of a fine, imprisonment, going to jail, whatever. It's a violation of their rights. And that alone should be an impeachable offense.
Thanks, Debbie. And we are going to be taking calls throughout the day today as we're in votes here on the floor. I want to hear what you think about the government shutdown. Of course, today, again, working on the retroactive pay for federal furloughed workers. And also they worked earlier and debated a bill that would make sure that military service people have chaplains attending to them. And the Associated Press reports that House Republicans appear to be shifting their demands, kind of on a broader look here. Less insistence on defunding the health care law, more focus on the future fights that are coming up, including that debt ceiling, raising the debt ceiling, reducing federal benefit programs, and future deficits. Again, that from the AP. We're going to take a look now at what happened a little bit earlier today here on the floor. We heard from Lee Terry, Republican of Nebraska, and Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat from Maryland, and he's also the ranking member on the Budget Committee. We'll take a look and see what their remarks were from the House floor earlier as we're in this 15-minute vote.
I have many constituents that are federal employees that are furloughed right now, including the majority of them being civilian employees at Offutt Air Force Base and STRATCOM. The legislation that we're considering here today will make sure that the 800,000 federal employees are paid for the time lost or off work during this impasse. Now, we worked last week in a bipartisan effort to make sure that our military would be paid, and included in that bill called Pay Our Military Act was also very clear language that protected civilian DOD workers from furlough. But unfortunately, in a bizarre what's the definition of is discussion in the White House and DOD, they furloughed almost 60 to 70% of the civilian employees where there's critical missions endangering our country. So having a bill like this, where we come together in a bipartisan way, we can reduce some level of frustration, we can give some level of peace of mind to those employees that they will be reimbursed for their time off. They will get paid. I want the DOD today to put those civilian DOD employees back to work as it's clearly in the law. Now, there's historical precedent for this all the way back to Ronald Reagan times with Tip O'Neill, and there's 6 closed downs that the employees were paid or reimbursed for their time off. And so it should be for this effort. This is bipartisan. The president has said that he will sign this. And I urge my colleagues to support this effort. I yield back.
Gentleman's time expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute. Distinguished gentleman, the ranking member of the Budget Committee, Mr. Van Hollen from Maryland.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend from Maryland. No one should be made to suffer for actions that are no fault of their own. So I'm very pleased that we're taking up this measure to ensure that dedicated federal workers who are among the many innocent victims of this government shutdown will be held harmless in the long run. But this important measure simply highlights the sheer folly of keeping the federal government shut down for 1 additional minute. These are public servants who are paid to do what they love to do, to serve the public. So for goodness sakes, let them all get back to work for the public now. This bill, Mr. Speaker, doesn't say let's just pay the federal employees at FEMA. It doesn't say let's just pay the federal employees at the national parks. It doesn't say let's just pay the federal employees at the piecemeal, cherry-picking agencies that our Republican colleagues have brought to the floor. It says let's make sure we hold all federal employees whole. Absolutely. And let's open the entire federal government and do it now. Mr. Speaker, let us have a vote on that very simple proposition.
Now, as a look at some of what happened earlier, remarks from the Democrat from Maryland there, and also Republican from Nebraska. We're in a vote here. This vote on the retroactive pay for furloughed federal workers. And again, kind of winding down here in the vote, but we are going to continue to take your phone calls, and we'll put the numbers up on the screen, but want to get to Dolores in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Been waiting for a while there on the line. Thanks a lot. And you're on the Republican line. Go ahead.
Thank you. From day one, from the time President Barack Obama was elected, he has seemed to forget that he was elected to be the president of all Americans, and not just the Democrats. He has
consistently talked down the Republican Party in every chance that he gets. He has never, ever declined to not put them in a negative light. So therefore, if he was elected as the president of the Republicans and the Democrats, why doesn't he use his power now to call the Democrats back from their little vacation they took for themselves at a very critical time such as this?
Well, and Dolores, we are going to be, the Senate will be coming in later today, 12 noon. The House, of course, working on a couple of votes today here. It looks like this one wrapping up. And speaking of bipartisanship, this is one area where it looks like Republicans and Democrats have come to a bipartisan agreement, voting mostly yay on the passage of this retroactive pay for furloughed federal workers. The White House also says it's been issuing veto threats on every one of the piecemeal bills that we've seen the House try to put forward. But on this Federal Employee Retroactive Pay Fairness Act, it's different. The White House says, and President Obama says, he will not veto this because it doesn't fund any government agencies that are presently shuttered. It just simply pays people who have been off and forced to be off during this time. Of course, this being day 5 of the shutdown. We're going to check in with Vicki in Dayton, Ohio on the Independence line. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I would just like to comment on C-SPAN itself. Whenever there's something critical going on in the government, I turn to C-SPAN because I get an unedited view of what's going on. I've been watching events in the House and the Senate this week. In fact, I have it on right now. And I just think we as Americans need to wake up and really pay attention to get those unedited, unadulterated points of view by looking at this stuff ourselves and not leaning and relying on national media, which so many times is biased. They will edit comments, to lean a certain direction. And I just think that we as Americans need to pay attention, and we have this wonderful tool of C-SPAN to do that and to be able to just figure things out for ourselves and not just take party lines. And it makes me sad that I think the Democrats, as I watch them, that it's almost as if they think we're stupid, that we can't on our own just watch what's going on and see the obvious truth. So I just want to thank C-SPAN for being there and hope you all continue.
Oh, and sure. Vicki, what kind of truth were you talking about there with the Democrats?
Well, in the sense that, it's like they're repeating a mantra of we want the government to be open and we don't want a piecemeal. Whereas the Republicans are simply saying, let's agree on what we agree on and then deal with what we don't agree on in conference. I mean, that's common sense. And, it just, to me, that's so obvious. Yes, they have disagreements, and let's get to the disagreements, but in the meantime, why are we punishing all these other people in areas where we do agree? And it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And to me, from my point of view, it makes the Democrats look power-hungry, self-centered, stubborn, intractable. It just makes them look really foolish to me.
Thanks, Vicki, for the comments, and thanks for tuning in from Dayton. We are going to go back here to the floor of the House, and also want to remind you, you're calling in. We're going to keep taking your calls throughout the day, but you can also weigh in on Facebook.com/C-SPAN and send us a tweet, and make sure just to use the hashtag C-SPAN chat, as looks like this vote is coming to an end, and possibly continuing on to the vote for the chaplains for military personnel.